At the start of every kill, Nex will call all 4 of her minions, and it's after she calls GLACIES that the attack options appear to attack Nex. But you don't want to attack Nex until this last piece of ice flies into her body, or any damage you deal will be nulled and you'll just hit 0. Also, Nex has 2 specials for every phase. She does 1 special followed by 5 standard attacks, followed by another special, and repeats this for the entire kill. The first special in phase 1 is the virus, where she makes a player cough. This player will be losing 2 prayer points and also be losing 20 offensive stats for whichever style they're currently using. So this guy's using a fang, so he's going to be losing minus 20 attack, strength and defense, as well as losing 10 prayer points. He will cough 5 times before it's over, and if he stands next to anyone else, it will spread to that person and restart the cough, so they'll cough 5 times again. So I'm tanking Nex here, and Nex has a 4-tick attack speed, but for the most part people are using fangs killing Nex, and we've got a 5-tick weapon. So the community and most people are doing something where we make Nex 5-tick with us, and we do that simply by stepping under Nex 1 tick before our next attack is due. This will stall Nex for a tick and make her 5-tick with us. It's also completely optional in phase 1 whether you flick to melee prey whilst you're tanking. As you can see here on this next tank, I flick to melee prey, and luckily she melees me. It's like 50-50 whether she chooses to melee or mage, so camping mage prey or flicking to melee results in about the same damage taken overall, and it's completely optional. Coming up is the second special of phase 1. For this special, Nex shouts "there is," followed by "no escape," and it's just after she shouts "there is" that she will look at a random lane, either north, east, south or west, and you do not want to be in the lane she stares down because she is going to fly and sprint down it, and she will take out any players in her way. Here she looks north to X menu, which means X menu needs to move out of the way, which he does tick perfectly. Okay, so before we get into the minions, I need to explain Nex's attack range, the tile markers, and how you can use this information to take 0 damage during the minion phases. Nex can only see 10 tiles, which is what the black arrows indicate. However, we have an 11 by 11 marked box, which is 11 tiles away from the centre, and as long as Nex is centred, she can't see any of this square. But if Nex was to move 1 tile north, the northern side would be completely seen by Nex, so you wouldn't be able to stand north. The same for if she moved 1 west towards me, I would not be able to go and use the western thumbs tile, as she could see that. As well as you never want Nex to be in the area where the red X's are, as if she is stood here, she can see both sides. So ideally, 1 person tanks, which is going to be X menu. X menu gets chased north, which means that me and Migmog can go west and stand on the western side and be completely out of Nex's range. And X menu is also reflipping Nex back to the centre of the room, which will be explained in depth in phase 2. Okay, so not everything always goes smoothly, and I wanted to show an example of what happens when you do something wrong. So the lane dash special here, I misclick under Nex, and this is a very old clip, Rapier Armadillo pre-TOA. So you'll take up to 50 damage, you'll be stunned for a second, and you're going to lose the ability to control your camera. Here I am trying to middle mouse and drag to see Nex, but for about 10 seconds I have lost the ability to properly control my camera. And the amount of time that this can go on for varies. I have had this bug out and had it still going on halfway through the minions. Before we get into phase 2, there is one last mechanic in phase 1 that I need to explain, and it's kind of a rare mechanic that you don't see very often, but once you know how it works, you can have a bit of fun with it, and I've left in a clip that I thought was quite funny. So what is the drag mechanic? Sometimes Nex can drag you towards her, turn off your protection spray, and melee you in the face while you've got no praise up. This also stacks with the previous mage hit she did on you, so watch out hardcore Iron Men, you can take up to 63 damage in the same tick in phase 1, so always try and be 64 plus HP. Thank you to Mod Ash for replying to my question about how the mechanic works. Mod Ash has answered saying it is a 1 in 4 chance by default for her to do this to you, reduced to 1 in 8 if you're praying against magic. However, this can only happen if you're within 6 tiles of her. It doesn't work if you're in melee distance, so she can't do it in melee distance, and she can't do it if you're 7 plus tiles away. So you need to be in this niche 2 to 6 tile range for this 1 in 4 chance, or 1 in 8 if you're praying mage, to take effect. And I'll let the next clip play out, and I think you'll see what my intentions were doing what I was doing in the clip. I'm really sorry, Kenny, it was nothing personal if you end up watching this. Before we get into P2, I'm going to explain sprinting and the flip mechanic. When fighting Nex at a distance, she has a random chance to sprint at the player, trying to melee them instead of maging or ranging them. And Nex also has a mechanic that if she cannot attack a player for 8 to 12 game ticks, she will flip and change her current position. The 8 to 12 tick timer starts from the moment her last attack ended. So in the case you're stood far away and she begins to randomly sprint at you, if you step forward to go underneath her, the 8 to 12 ticks are almost up, resulting in her flipping almost immediately. There is 2 types of flips that are important to understand: Nex flipping to the player and Nex flipping away from the player. Being underneath Nex on tick 8 to 12 of her not attacking results in her flipping away from the player, which usually puts her back in the centre of the room. This is ideal. Not being underneath Nex on tick 8 to 12 results in her flipping to the player rather than away from the player. This is a random location 1 to 5 tiles away from the player she is trying to flip to. In most cases this is bad and should be avoided. During phase 2 the team is standing north and stepping under Nex to reflip her back to the centre every time she sprints towards us. Nex's ranged attack has a niche mechanic in phase 2 where the further you're stood away, the lower the max hit, and providing you are 9 or 10 tiles away, that max hit will only be 3. If using a weapon like a zaryte crossbow which has a range of 8, ideally you want to be stepping backwards 1 or 2 tiles between every attack, so you drag forwards for each of those attacks. And here we have the first special I'm going to explain during phase 1, which is Fear the Shadow. It is a very simple mechanic, just don't step on those shadows or you will take a lot of damage. The second special coming up is Embrace Darkness, which we will explain a bit more in depth later in the phase as well. But as you can see, the room dims as she shouts it. And the closer you get to Nex, the darker the room becomes. And if you are within 2 tiles of Nex, 3 tiles away is safe, but within 1 or 2 tiles of Nex for more than 5 game ticks, you will start taking damage every single tick. And this is about 18 to 22 damage every tick. So you will die very fast if you are close to Nex during the Embrace Darkness mechanic. I am going to be giving many examples here of how to deal with UMBRA during phase 2, as this is the most important part of the kill and is where most kills fail in small teams. it is extremely important that the person tanking Umbra is praying mage and is also out of range from Nex, as you do not want to be flicking between mage and range for Nex and the minion. So ideally 2 people or the rest of the team is north and it's still flipping Nex. As you can see, the 2 teammates here have stepped under Nex to reflip her while still fighting Umbra, and I am still out of range. So before we get into Umbra, I just wanted to explain a couple of ways of how you can make sure that Nex is always in the centre of the room at the start of phase 2 or during phase 2 if she messes up for any reason. At the end of phase 1 here, she will always shout "darken my shadow" before starting phase 2, and the person she is looking at can step underneath Nex to make sure that she flips back into the centre of the room at the start of the phase. You can also recenter Nex back into the middle during phase 2 without even needing to have her sprint or to have her flip. In this example, I'm waiting till Nex looks at me, and once I have the aggro, I'm going to run in the opposite direction from Nex, just 1 tile short of that 11 by 11 box, which will always stop Nex perfectly in the centre of the room. This example very similar to the last, except for this time I didn't have the patience to wait until I had the current aggro, so I told the guy who did have the aggro to run towards the altar. He ran 1 tile too far, but that's fine. Nex is now in a good position. So it's time for all of the do's and the don'ts during Umbra, and this is important so you don't take an early trip to Def's office. As Umbra is called, I try to make sure I am the first person on the tile marked Umbra, as this is the furthest point that Umbra can see, and the first person in this range will be the person tanking Umbra. I usually want this to be me. So as I click this tile, I pray mage, as we need to pray mage for Umbra. And from here, I need to make my way to the eastern side on the eastern tiles marked Umbra, without being the current aggro from Nex. So this little stop here, this is very important. That's a very important click. We do not make our way straight to the eastern side. We instead look at Nex, and as you can see, Nex is currently targeting me. So if I did actually step over to that eastern side, Nex would drag down the eastern lane and just carry on attacking me. I need to do this when she's not attacking me and she's attacking one of the other 2. So I simply wait, she turns to someone else, and then I make my way to this side so that I am out of range from Nex. So with the information given so far, on this freeze frame, are you able to spot what's wrong? It's Dirty Crease. It's the guy standing randomly in the middle. He is in range of Nex, but he is too far away from Nex. If Nex decides that she wants to sprint towards him, this is not good. She will end up flipping towards him instead of away from him, which means she's going to flip within 1 to 5 tiles of his current position. That's going to bring Nex very close to me if that happens, and with my HP so low, I'll probably get 1 shot by the range hit. And as you can see here, Nex has flipped towards him. My immediate reaction here is to run away, which was good because the next incoming range attack would have killed me. There is a lot of different scenarios that can play out when you are setting up or fighting Umbra. In this particular case, I run towards Umbra to grab the tank, I pray mage, I do my usual thing of stopping a few tiles short of the eastern side just to check whether I have that tank before fully crossing over. But in this case, she's not only looking at me, she's just started sprinting towards me. And there is only one thing you can do in this situation to fix it, and that is to turn back around and run towards Nex to reflip her back to the centre. Otherwise, she is going to flip to me and we're going to have a very bad time. This clip is a bit similar to the last one. Here I've grabbed the UMBRA tank and I'm making my way to the east side, except for Nex starts to sprint at me a few ticks later than in the last clip. This causes her to actually drag down the eastern lane towards me, but it's the same principle. Run straight towards Nex and re-flip her back to the centre. In this clip, I'm going to show you how you can save your teammate if he is tanking UMBRA and Nex at the same time. I want you to pay attention to the guy in the circle. He's not currently the UMBRA tank, but both him and the guy praying mage who is the UMBRA tank both step over one tile to the eastern side at the same time. However, this is unfortunately at the same time that Nex turns away from me and turns to the guy in the circle. So Nex will naturally follow him down the eastern lane and still be in range of everyone on the eastern side. The way to fix this is for the person on the northern side to step one tile south back into Nex's range, and then once Nex switches to me and attacks me, I can do the same thing but in reverse. I can step one tile north, which will drag Nex back north off of the eastern side and allow the UMBRA tank here to sit there and pray mage without being hit by Nex. This clip is the same as the last, with the difference being that this time I'm the UMBRA tank and I cross over to the eastern side too soon and I cause Nex to drag down to the eastern side with me. And you may not always have a teammate that knows how to save you, but that's fine because you can save yourself. As you see here, I click over and drag Nex down to the eastern side, but the immediate and easy fix is to come straight back to the north side and drag Nex back north, wait until Nex switches to someone else, and then go back to the eastern side. Sometimes things go south, and as UMBRA gets called, you may have Nex in a random position and just everyone's all over the place. This is going to show you how you can make the best of a bad situation. In this particular clip, the two guys that are standing in range of Nex are standing too far away from Nex, to a point where if Nex sprinted at them, she would end up flipping to them before she reached them. Ideally, these guys should actually be moving north, roughly where the green tick is marked, which is what I do in preparation for when Nex does sprint towards them. Because as Nex does sprint towards these people, I am going to transition to the other UMBRA tile to make sure that I am as far away from Nex when she flips. This short clip is showing that you shouldn't stand too close to the UMBRA tank, especially as you won't be praying mage. UMBRA's attack has an area of effect that will target players underneath or one tile away from the person she's currently targeting, so my friend here took a 27 to the face. A little cheeky bonus clip showing you how you can make your supplies just last a little bit longer if you need them to, or how you can just show off to your friends. With Nex's ranged attack having a max hit of 3 when you're 9 or 10 tiles away, this becomes a max hit of 7 if you're not praying. So providing you are 8 HP or above, you are totally fine to flick to redemption. I'm only going to use one clip to explain this, as I think that's all we need. I have seen so many people die to this mechanic, and I have paused the Nex here on the tick of her last attack before she starts sprinting. So that 8 to 12 tick timer for her to start flipping starts here on this tick. If you happen to be in Embrace Darkness and you mess up flipping Nex and instead tank a hit from Nex, that is going to restart that 8 to 12 tick timer, but you cannot be that close to Nex for that long, and that is exactly what happens to this guy here. Luckily one of them notices that this guy just tanked a 13, and he decides to run, and he takes 2 damages just as he runs off there from the Embrace Darkness. It's an 11 and a 16, but the poor guy here didn't realise and carried on going underneath. Melee Phase 2. Something that the community's been doing since not long after the Fang released. And to do Melee Phase 2, you can only do this during the Fear the Shadow special, not during Embrace Darkness, as you can't be in melee distance during that special. So we can only melee for 50% of Phase 2. And it's important when starting Phase 2 that you know which rotation Nex is on and which special she used last during Phase 1. As you can see here, there's two lists of rotations, Rotation A and Rotation B. And if Nex was to use the There Is No Escape special at the end of Phase 1, this means that she would start Phase 2 with Fear the Shadow, meaning that you know that you can run straight towards Nex at the start of Phase 2 and start meleeing. Whereas if she was to finish with Let the Virus Flow Through You and she was making a player cough before the end of Phase 1, you would start with ranging on Phase 2, as you know that it will start with Embrace Darkness. At the end of Phase 1, Nex uses her lane dash attack, so she will start Phase 2 with Fear the Shadow. And as I come into melee distance here, I stick on my melee prey. Nex's ranged attack is the only attack from Nex which you can pray for after she does her animation and actually pray for just before you take the damage. Praying like this is tick perfect, as it leaves you with a 1 tick window to pray range after praying melee to correctly pray for the attack. Also, as Nex shouts Embrace Darkness, you are only going to want to do one more Fang hit after this before getting out of range to start ranging her again. Maybe you're in a team that doesn't want to do melee P2 and they just want to do range to be a little bit more chill. Well, you can still get a bit of extra DPS and throw off your voidwaker specs as she shouts Fear the Shadow. As long as you're counting 5 attacks after she shouts Embrace Darkness, you can click towards, throw a voidwaker spec, and get back out of range again before she does her next attack. Phase 3, the Blood Phase. Nex's magic attacks heal for 150% of the damage she hits. An example being, getting hit for 16 will heal Nex for 24. During this phase you want to remain fully potted whilst maintaining a high level of focus. Nex's magic attacks have an area of effect which will also target any players under you or 1 tile away from you. This means all players need to maintain a 2 tile gap during the entirety of this phase. Preferably people stand on the corners of Nex and use melee, as when taking a melee hit this does not heal Nex. The first special here is the Siphon special. Nex will hug and wrap her arms around herself for 8 game ticks. During these 8 ticks you do not want to attack Nex, as any damage dealt to Nex will heal Nex for that amount instead. As well as that, she spawns 2 Blood Reavers. These Blood Reavers stay active for 10 attacks until Nex is next due to spawn the Reavers again. It is important to tag and kill these Reavers as soon as possible. For every hit point the Reavers have left when the next Reaver set spawns, Nex will be healed for twice that amount. Leaving a Reaver very close to dead at around 10 hit points is fine, but if it's any higher, you will want to damage it some more. The only time you would ever want to ignore these Reavers is if you believe you can kill the Phase 3 minion and start Phase 4 before the next Siphon special is due. Coming up is the Blood Sacrifice special attack. For this special attack, Nex will turn 1 player in the team red. This person has 7 game ticks or 4.2 seconds to get 7 tiles away from Nex. If you got far enough away from Nex, you will take no damage. However, if you mess up, you will take a large amount of damage and heal Nex for a minimum of 40 hit points. Some of you may have looked in my invent and thought to yourself, what is this guy doing with regular restore potions, 3 super combats and 2 range pots just for 1 kill? Believe it or not, restore potions are better than super restore potions for restoring stats. However, they do not restore any prayer points. A super restore gives plus 32 stats back and plus 32 prayer, whereas a normal restore potion will give plus 40 stats back and plus 0 prayer. I'm sure most people are familiar with the 3-to-1 brew and restore ratio, or 4-to-1 ratio if you are fully potted. However, the restore potion is 4-to-1 at 99 stats and 5-to-1 fully potted. This means I can drink 1 brew followed by 1 super combat between the melee hits, so I remain fully potted for every hit, and I can do this 5 times in a row before needing to drink 1 restore dose. We deal with a phase 3 minion the same way as we deal with the phase 1 minion. Preferably we stand on the opposite side to which Nex is. If Nex was to go down the south lane, we'd want to be on the east wall, and if she goes down the east lane, we'd want to be on the south wall. In this clip here, I think she stays perfectly centered, so it doesn't matter whether I am east or south. Phase 3 Advanced Tips and Tricks. When ending Phase 2, taking note of which rotation the specials are on can save a lot of time when entering P3. If Phase 2 ends with Embrace Darkness, which is what's happening here in this clip, Nex will start Phase 3 with Siphon. And the amount of times I see somebody start P3 with a zaryte crossbow spec that heals Nex for 110 is unbelievable, so this is definitely something to look out for. Another one for the hardcores who want to keep their status while killing Nex. If you manage to mess up the blood sacrifice and are still targeted by Nex, she can melee you as you get back to her. This will stack the previous mage hit on the same tick as the incoming melee hit. This can result in taking over 60 damage in the same tick, and for this reason I recommend all hardcore Iron Men stay above 75 hit points throughout this phase, and preferably the entire kill. Stalling Blood Reavers. It is possible to delay the Blood Reavers indefinitely until the Phase 3 minion is ready to be killed. However, it's not every kill you get the opportunity to use this nice piece of tech. As we know, Nex does 5 attacks between every special. If you're failing the blood sacrifice, this will be 6 attacks and not 5. Also, if Nex is flipped 1 attack before her next special is due, this will add 1 more attack to her attack cycle before she does the next special. It is possible to infinitely flip Nex by getting back under her again before she ever does a second attack after flipping. The only time you want to do this is if Nex is at roughly 1450 HP or just under 1500 HP, or lower after counting to 5 attacks after a blood sacrifice, or 6 if the person failed it. Nex will call for the Phase 3 minion at 1360 HP, and if you stall the reavers at about 1450 HP, it is likely your team will do the damage needed to move on to the minion before the reavers spawn, allowing you to ignore those reavers and kill the minion before the next set is due. Doing this results in around 15 to 20 seconds time save if executed properly, and this opportunity arises quite often in kills. Phase 4, the ice phase. For this phase you want to remain in melee distance as much as possible, whilst not standing on the same tile as another player, as there is a mechanic in this phase that will trap a random player and any other players stood underneath the one who was targeted. Nex's magic attacks in phase 4 behave the same way as phase 1's magic attacks, wherein if she targets one person with mage, then all players will be hit with mage. You will want to camp Mage Prayer the entire phase, as you will be frozen by Nex if attacked without Protect from Magic active. The first special to explain here is the Ice Contain. Nex will shout "Contain this." This gives you 5 game ticks or 3 seconds to step one tile away from Nex to avoid the spikes of ice that shoot up around herself. After stepping back, you will have time to get off 2 ranged attacks before swapping back to melee gear and getting back into melee distance. Coming up is the Ice Prison special. Nex will contain a random player in ice. This person is unable to move or attack Nex until someone else on the team hits any one of the spikes around them with a melee weapon. It is important to point out that attacking these spikes does not affect your current attack delay. You can attack the spike and free the player between your attacks. For example, you could hit Nex with your fang and then attack the spike on the very next tick, and then go back to fanging Nex again, and you will still hit Nex 5 ticks after your previous fang, resulting in no tick loss for freeing your friend. The phase 4 minion. We play this in the same way as we play the minions in phase 1 and phase 3. If you are the one tanking the minion GLACIES during phase 4, it is a good idea to stay away from Nex and not be in melee distance or underneath. This is because GLACIES has a very high chance to freeze whoever she is targeting. If Nex was to contain herself, you could get caught in a sticky situation, and if this happens, you will want to swap to ranged prayer, as that halves the damage taken from this special. Going a bit more in depth now on the ice prison. Nex always attacks again, 8 ticks after she shouts "Die now" in a prison of ice. The timer for yourself being contained is also 8 ticks, but starts from the moment you are visibly trapped in ice, which can change depending on how far away you are from Nex. I'm going to play clips with 2 out of the 4 possible outcomes shown below. 1 or 2 tiles away, plus 9 or 10 tiles away, as these are the most common. Also watch out if you are 6, 7 or 8 tiles away, as you will be tanking Nex off prayer whilst praying for the ice contain. If 1 or 2 tiles away, the contain will take 2 ticks to visibly contain the player. You will pray mage first, then range 2 ticks after Nex's first attack. And although my team frees me in both of these clips, you can see my range prayer activates on the same tick the ice disappears, which is the same time you would take damage if still trapped. If 9 or 10 tiles away, the contain will take 5 ticks to visibly contain the player. You will pray range 1 tick after Nex's second attack. I've not touched on Nex's max hits till now, although this information was displayed for the previous phases too. However, in the final phase, Nex can randomly drain any player for -4 attack, strength and defense, transferring these stats to herself, which slowly increases her max hit over time. These max hits start at 33 for magic and 30 for melee, and exponentially increase throughout the phase. Nex also repeats a 12 attack cycle where she uses the curse prayers from RuneScape 3. When phase 5 begins, Nex will use Soul Split for her first 4 attacks. This will heal Nex a small percentage of health for every successful hit she inflicts, on up to a maximum of 3 players, no matter how big the team size. For the next 4 attacks, Nex will use a deflect melee overhead. This will deflect half of any melee damage you would have dealt back to yourself, so you definitely want to be ranging here, or you will kill yourself. The last 4 auto attacks, Nex has no overheads, and it's during these 4 autos she has a random chance to drain your stats -4 and transfer that to herself. Upon death, Nex shouts "Taste my wrath." This is a stronger version of Retribution, giving you 3 seconds to run away from Nex after her demise. This clip starts halfway through P5, but I just wanted to show one example of the full 12 attack cycle before going a bit more in depth. 4 autos with Soul Split, 4 autos with Deflect Melee, 4 autos with no overhead. As this clip unpauses, Nex is going to activate Soul Split for 4 autos. You want to count Nex's attacks so you don't melee yourself as she swaps to Deflect Melee and swap to range gear accordingly. Whilst ranging on Deflect Melee, you will want to do the same and count out 4 attacks from Nex again and prepare to swap back into melee, and you essentially repeat around this cycle until Nex falls down and dies. Phase 5, Advanced Tips and Tricks. If using a voidwaker as a special attack weapon, you can hold and use the specs whilst Nex has Deflect Melee active, and if speccing twice, you will only need to do 2 ranged attacks before swapping back to melee. It's a good idea to hold your specs in phase 4, so you can use these for the Deflect Melee in phase 5. Predicting when the tank swaps. This is very advanced and will save you countless amount of supplies over the course of a long Nex grind. This really only applies to P5. This is not a guarantee, and due to multiple factors that I will not go into, if not this video will be over 2 hours long, I'm not kidding. However, for the most part, Nex will attack 4 times before she swaps to a new target. With this in mind, you can count and swap to melee prayer for every 4th attack, as Nex's first attack on a new target has over an 80% chance of being a melee hit for the first attack. As this clip unpauses, I will count out the attacks and pause for a few seconds on every 4th attack so you can see what is happening. So that's 1, 2, 3, and he's going to attack one more, that's 4, swap to melee pray, and as you can see the other guy is taking a 27 while I am correctly praying melee. And that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and swap to melee pray, and as you can see the other guy is now taken a 14 damage off prayer. That's 2, 3, 4, swap to melee prayer, same again, 14 off prayer for the other guy. 2, 3, 4, you're in phase 5. You run out of supplies and Nex is not anywhere near dead yet. What do? Do you teleport out? Do you hide in the corner maybe? Or instead go to 11 tiles away where Nex can no longer see you and drag yourself in range for your attacks between Nex's attacks. As long as you are not within 10 tiles of Nex on the tick she makes an attack, she will never be able to target you. This trick should only be used in this case where you have no other alternatives. To kill Nex, you'll need some kill count. Getting the kill count can be pretty tedious, so I have come up with what I believe to be the most optimal way to get it. You will want a serp helm, a blowpipe, and a twisted bow. When entering the area, you will want to tag all reavers once each to venom them, whilst making your way to the marked orange square. You will not leave this square once inside of it, and tag any reavers with serp and blowpipe that you can reach while staying inside of it. One blowpipe shot will kill the reaver, as it will slowly die to venom. Between tagging the reavers, you will want to kill the spiritual mages with your twisted bow, and that's about it. Thanks so much for 2,000 subscribers, and if you made it to the end, well, you're fucking nuts. One love, and I'll see you guys on the next one.